Welcome, everyone. It's Mad. In today's class, we're going to talk about the Latios Latias battle analysis that I did mostly on the Saturday, but did encompass a little bit on the Sunday as well. The class today, we're going to take notes on the initial analysis into the max meter. It's going to be focusing on the 5-star data, but it does compare very closely to the 6-star data that I was able to get. So let's go ahead and get class started. So what is being covered? So really, we're just going to try to understand how the max meter is filled at the 5-star Dynamax scale, and the goal is to optimize the speed of the max meter and potentially damage as well. We looked at attack speed at 0.5 seconds and 1 seconds, using or not using charge moves, and that's both for the speed and also trying to optimize damage dealt. Does effective, not effective affect the max meter? What about stats and max mushrooms? We'll all go through that. The 6-star, does it compare? It does. It's actually pretty close. And analysis of the overall damage during the normal phase as well. So how did I get this data? I attacked with a single Pokemon just like the 6-star. And it's against Latios and Latias, and I will discuss during which and try to compare during each as well. If the Pokemon fainted, I estimated how much of the max meter was filled via the angle, and this time I will be providing all the angles as well, so you can understand how far during the battle. 180 degrees means I fainted instantly or didn't get a single attack off, and 0 means I made it all the way to the first transformation. When the very first attack is about to appear, I started counting frames, and I stopped counting frames when I either fainted during that animation or when I was going into transformation. All battles were from the same power spot for each Pokemon. Latios was one specific spot, and Latias was done during another. They were completed within the same hour, so there was 2 spots for Latios and 1 spot for Latias. And why am I using frames as a metric? Because with my software, it is always a solid number, so I don't have to worry about going into decimals, and I can transfer that into seconds by going divided by 29.97. It's not quite 30 seconds or 30 frames per second what I was using. And I will also state that day it was 95 degrees even at 11:30 in the morning when I was doing this. And my phone was starting to overheat near the end. So some of the data I'm going to hand wave a little bit and just say that I had some very interesting recordings that I did my best on and maybe a little bit flawed. All right, we're going to do just like what we did to 6-star and try to get a quick standardization to see what to expect when we compare. And Zamazenta is probably the best one overall for us. Zacian might have been a little bit better, but I did 4 runs with Zamazenta. And for the Latios, the standard deviation was 1.6 seconds, not as good as the 1.2 seconds for Lapras, but in fairness, 5-stars hit a lot harder than 6-stars, even when you account for the attack power differences. They definitely make you hit a lot. They hit a lot harder in 5-star, but have lower HP pools than the Gigantamax. And that has pretty much been consistent throughout. And for when I do my damage analysis, I'm now very confident in that. But overall, the spread was really tight. The first fight felt off, and part of that was I have it at 90 degrees, but it was at a really weird angle. I expect it to be actually more in the just around 89 degrees or 91, and that would have made more sense. But that's what I had measured. That's what I'm keeping it at right now. The mean timing was exactly 50 seconds, and going against a 6-star was 49.8 seconds with a slightly smaller spread. And if I take away the 52.1, it would have been a little less than that. So we're talking exactly the same spot. And assuming your team has 4 trainers total, that means it's about every 12.5 seconds, minus the animations beforehand and after, which doesn't count towards the fight anyways for the Pokemon attacking you. It feels just about correct, which means that if you do get at 12.5 with the animation and like a 3 or 4 second attack, that means you're only getting attacked once. A 1.5 second attack, that means you're probably being attacked twice, and it's an important setting overall. So here's the 6-star versus the 5-star. The 5-star, the standard deviation was a little bit bigger at 1.6 versus 1.2. Overall, though, if we're really just taking a look at everything, you can definitely see that these overlap. And even with the 0.4 seconds difference in standard deviation, that's really well within what I expect. I would say 1.5 to 1.6 seconds is what I expected for my standard deviation, because there's different moves going on. It hits a little harder, so et cetera, et cetera. And for the means, the spread was less than 0.2 seconds. So they're basically the same for filling the max. Some of the others were a little different, but the Zamazentas were the ones that I based everything on because they have the highest defense. So they have Zamazenta has the best chance at evening some stuff out, and that's why I'm using Zamazenta as my goalpost. So we're going to take Latios versus Latias, and what's really interesting here is we got a pretty large standard deviation with Latias, and that's because the fainting was a lot earlier, and the timing was 50 seconds for Latios and 66.2 seconds for Latias. And this is what I kind of see overall in a lot of others. And I'm not going to just do slide after slide after slide of showing this difference. But if you are fainting quickly, after 1 or 2 attacks, you are really hurting your team, not because you're losing or your Pokemon has fainted. It's because it is adding a pretty hefty delay of 2 to 3 seconds, which means another attack is coming. And so having Pokemon that may be very strong but have no defense, you're just making your team take that much more punishment when you are losing the animations. Switching also will have an animation lock, which will slow some stuff down. But at the very least, if you're absorbing a very high attack and you're taking a lot less damage, the couple of seconds difference there really doesn't make too much of a difference. But if you have to keep adjusting overall because your team is weak, that's something you can definitely fix. Sometimes, though, if they're just so strong, we have to adjust our strategies. So we're going to take a look at the 0.5 second analysis power averages. And this one here, I try to take a look at, and I looked at, for me, the best that I could for damage. And sometimes like Gengar, they were just kind of one-shotted. So using a move that it makes, that is, that Latios was weak to, like Fury Cutter for Metagross, might make actually it a little faster. It still seemed to be within the noise. If you look at Gengar, it also had a weak damage, but it was getting one-shotted. Also, it was my weakest of the CPs as well. So, it was just one of those where I tried to do my best. Blissey also had a very long battle that made it just really longer than the average. If you took it, though, Blissey was still about as slow as Snorlax. The 52.6 seconds range, maybe 51.8. Zamazenta was very consistent at 50. Zacian was the fastest this route at 48.3. with the normal 0.5 seconds, and Metagross did hit fastest at 47.8. The weakness didn't really play a huge role here. Still going to try to do some more understanding. If I take, with Gengar also was weak, but it was being one-shotted, and generally was only making it through 25% of the battle. So that was really creating issues with that data. And even that, it was still doing about as good as Blissey, and Blissey was making it through at least half. And I'm saying that if you take a look at the CPs to the seconds with this data, you could definitely see that the overall CP and therefore CP is so heavily attack weighted that you can kind of use that as a damage gauge. It's not perfect, but Gengar and Blissey would probably be, maybe Gengar was slightly stronger than Blissey, but still roughly the same. Snorlax, Metagross, Zamazenta, Zacian. You could see that there might be a very small effect overall on damage, but compared to how quickly you max leveled, but it's still within 1 to 2 sigma. And when I say sigma, that's standard deviation. So, within 3, maybe with Zacian and Metagross, because Zacian and Metagross were hitting with weakness or had the highest attack, that, it does make a movement, but the biggest movement is that 0.5 seconds, which we'll see later on. And then maybe we saw with the weakness, if Zacian gets weakness, maybe it goes by even faster. But right now, for what we've seen, I would say that I would first focus on how much defense that you're getting from the Pokemon, or how much damage reduction, I should say, or how little damage you're receiving, versus, oh, this is a weak 0.5 and we could just kind of skip through everything. It's not a big enough factor. It kind of looks like it's a factor when you put it this way with the 5-star, but all in all, that 0.5 second is definitely the major driver, with a minor driver in how much damage that you do. Now, we're taking a 1 second versus 0.5 seconds. 0.5 seconds definitely was doing the advantage or the weakness. And you can see that with it being 96 seconds versus 48.5 seconds, you could almost say it was double the length as the 0.5 seconds, which makes a lot of sense. Also, there was the weakness versus nominal damage, and a lot of the others we could definitely say it's around 2x. Some of the animations are actually so slow it's 2.5x, but with this you could definitely tell that using the exact same Pokemon, and the only thing that I was changing was going from a 1 second attack to a 0.5 second attack. And yes, I did use up one of my fast TMs for my Metagross to do this. But with that, I was able to really honestly say, look, the big driver here is the 0.5 second versus 1 second. You're literally reducing the amount of attacks that you're receiving by half. So if you get 1 to 2 attacks at the 0.5 seconds, you'll get 2 to 3 attacks at the 1 second before each transformation. And reducing the amount of damage you get between each transformation is going to be key. All right, so next is going to be Zamazenta analysis with charged attacks. The top part here are the 4 runs that we did. And you've seen before that I've done with Zamazenta without charge, and the bottom 3 are with this charge. The charge is obviously going to be Behemoth Dash because it's a Zamazenta, so I don't have to put it on here. These frames are incorrect, so I do apologize, but the seconds are correct and the fainted times are correct. 1 second while I change these times. Now with the correct FRAM data here, you can see that charge attacks don't really slow you down a great deal. The mean time was 59.1 seconds with Zamazenta versus 50 seconds on the dot. So you were talking about 9 seconds overall. If you divide that by 4, so that you're looking at 2.5 extra seconds. So adding charged attacks, even with a fast charge like Zamazenta, will net you another attack on you on average, which is something that you're not really looking for. And at least during this part of the battle without the max shrooms, the damage was minimal compared with charge attack. All 3 charge attacks did the same, which was on par, about 2 times the amount without charge, which sounds like a lot, but each single attack did during transformation did slightly more than the overall attack total for the regular. So you're not really adding that much more damage and risking more damage in return. It is not optimal in that regards. The whole point, especially with 5-star, is to eliminate the attacks because they are so brutal. 6 stars, sometimes you're, at the point now where some of the units Pokemon are doing so powerful that may not It's still better to go just full out regular attacks, at least on the Zamazenta side of things. Now, we're going to look at the Zacian analysis with Max Shrooms, and this is going to be focusing on Latias. The first one is I kind of put in here and I did ignore it. It faded really early, and it was just being blitzed with the one attack that Zacian couldn't handle. So there is some things going on here. I'm not sure why it was so much longer overall. And I will say that this Zacian run was kind of in the middle. So one of the first few areas where I have a really hard time explaining, where the rest of the data feels really, really set. So I kind of ignored some of that there. So if you got rid of the 6.9 seconds, I got 49.9 seconds overall. That just felt more consistent with all the other data that I was gathering. If you do include it, it's around 53 seconds still, the overall time. And with the Max Shrooms, with Charged as well, and both of these were using Max Mushrooms. The times was 58.9 seconds. Once again, another solid 9-second difference. And this has been very consistent between the 6-star and 5-star, where we're adding around 2.5 seconds for a team of 4. And this is still enough where you're going to go from 1 attack to 2 attacks, or from 2 attacks to 3 attacks. But with the damage here, that pre-transformation, especially with the one that actually didn't faint, I took off 41 pixels with a Max Shroom and charge moves. During the non-charge, it was 22 pixels total. So we're talking almost double the overall power. And each max attack was 11 pixels each for 33 for Zacian. So with the Max Shrooms, we really saw a difference with the amount of damage that I was doing with the Behemoth Blade. And with the amount of power that we have, and Behemoth Blade is a very strong attack, Zacian, depending if you can survive long enough, might be worthwhile actually using said charged move. And for Eternatus, one of my plans now is to put in my Zacian and to attack using a charged move, my charge move of Behemoth Blade, due to its high attack, the Behemoth Blade, and also it being greatly boosted in power. And if that's the case, it will be worthwhile for Eternatus. But really, Zacian is the only one that I've been able to test out of all the Gmax and Dmax that we have, where charge moves might be worth it for the damage, even though you may be receiving some damage in return. And once again, I'm going to put this with a caveat. Zacian should only be doing this if the attack that you're receiving is something that it can take minimum damage with. So basically a dragon type move. If you're seeing a dragon type move, I would then go ahead and move with the charged attack for Zacian, and only Zacian. Next, we have the Zacian attacks with and without the Max Shrooms. The Max Shrooms really didn't do anything. They're all within the same standard deviation. As long as you get rid of that first 66.9 seconds, I don't know what's going on there. Yes, and so therefore there are no differences with and without Max Mushrooms for filling up the max meter, and you did 50% more damage throughout the run, but that's what Max Mushrooms do. So if you are struggling to stay in and you've got 20% left to go, the Max Mushrooms may help you, but they will not help you fill up the max meter faster at all. And that definitely brings out, at the very least, that overall damage isn't playing a role. Most likely weakness is not playing a role, but it somehow does. So there might be a little portion of the calculation that has a weakness involved for the max meter, but damage is definitely not involved. Next is the Metagross with and without Max Mushrooms. There was Max Mushroom with no charge moves, did 50% more damage expected. There was no filling difference. They basically identically the same. The only difference is the middle run here at the 45.8. That really finished quickly. The others were solidly 48.5 and 48.8. And you do notice that they did run a little faster than the others. And that's why I say there might be something going on here, but it's just really hard for me to tell. Interestingly enough, with the charge moves, we saw about a 14-second difference with Metagross. Part of that is there is a much larger animation, which does slow things down. The max attack was roughly equal to the non-mushroom damage, and Metagross just didn't do enough damage for, even with the max mushrooms, to really notice the difference between charged and non-charged. It's just better to get to that transformation, especially since it took 14 seconds, which if you divide that by 4, you're talking 3.5 seconds there, and that's a guaranteed attack difference there. Finally, we have our 1-second attack analysis, and you can see here that Metagross 96 seconds, while my Lapras took 110 seconds. The Lapras, though, was getting absolutely destroyed. Fainted well before. The Metagross was surviving pretty good. DPS is really poor at the 1 second. The Lapras charge attack seemed to land well within the range of the normal attack as well. The very last one, I did do one charge move with Blizzard. Really didn't drive very much at all. And once again, with the Metagross, you have 96 seconds up here. And going back to the 48 seconds there, once again, we're looking at double the overall damage, or not damage, double the overall time between 0.5 seconds and 1 second. Here's something that you're probably going to want to take a look at. I'm sorry that we don't really have a super high dimensional graph here, but this is all the data points that I was able to take during these runs, put them into a graph form. So at the bottom here, we have our fast speed of 0.5 seconds or 1 second attack speed. On the left-hand side is the amount of seconds taken. So this corner here used no charge attacks and no max mushrooms. This used no max mushrooms, but did have charge attack. Yes to both max mushrooms and charge attack, and yes to max mushrooms and no charge attack. So this does have it at least separated it out. And if you look at the shapes, you can see the difference between Blissey, Gengar, Lapras, Metagross, Snorlax, Zacian, Zamazenta. The ones in red were weakness, or were attacking using something that Latias or Latios was weak to, mostly bug, or ice, depending. And the blue was using a normal type attack that had no resistance to it at all. As you can see here, with the red, we had a much more consistent time with the weakness going through, even with like some of the others, while the normals, we definitely saw a bigger spread. So there might be something going on there. It's really hard to tell. At the bottom here, you can see that the best one with the Max Mushroom was better, but still, it's really hard with the data set to see that there is a difference and how much so. Too much spread, but without really looking at the data sheet, it's going to be really hard to get better results overall. For the charged, obviously, 0.5 seconds was just better. You could see the huge difference. Lapras here was 113 seconds. Zamazenta is the 57.7, but that's a couple of those up top as well. With this, there's a lot of other data. If you want some of this, I'll try to put this little spread picture up here on my Patreon for people to take a look at as well. But for future tests, I would like to do more analysis on weaknesses and resist for filling the max meter. I just really didn't have as much, I wouldn't say time. It was that it was so hot out where I was. And I have a pretty good phone case that cools it. I was starting to have trouble with temperature just because of how hot it was outside. I would like to do more analysis with the Max Mushroom. I'm going to be honest, I don't use them very much. And when I buy the tickets for each of the events, I get a Max Mushroom. So at least it'll give me something to use the Max Mushrooms for, and it will help all of the community, which is quite useful. I'll try to do more of a damage analysis to have a better understanding of charge attacks and potential damage optimization. Right now, though, for the overall findings, attacking with the 0.5 seconds is much better filling up the max meter. I know I've been telling the community, but now I can basically tell you for a fact that I've proven it. Overall, though, attacking with a weakness might slightly improve filling, but it's definitely not worth attacking with a 1 second fast attack that's weak. It's not going to overcome the lack of hitting or filling with the 0.5 seconds max meter. Attack power and max mushrooms did not change filling the max meter, but definitely does more damage. So it's not important for the max meter for the overall attack power, or if it is, it's a much smaller damage knob compared to the 0.5 seconds. It does seem like what's optimal would be to have a high attacker with 0.5 seconds and a weak attack. But we definitely need more data to hammer that down to see if that truly is important or not. Doing fast attacks will fill the max meter a lot more quickly. It does take about 9 seconds to 12 seconds longer at using 0.5 seconds with charge moves to fill the max meter, which means you will get hit one more time, which is something that we try to avoid. As I say, it wasn't really a drastic change. The splashy ones like Zacian could sometimes, depending on how fast your phone is, and I'm using a Samsung S23. If you do have a slower phone, the splashy ones like Zacian's will slow you down greatly, and whatever bonus you do get with that attack could get nullified. Finally, with max mushrooms, doesn't mean a thing with the max meter. It might make charge attacks damage enough for Zacian to risk the additional hit, just because it has such a high attack value power. And on top of that, I think it would be a good plan for Eternatus to be using your Behemoth Blade when you get the buffs for the charge attack. I think that is going to be the main thing that I put on there. And I'm going to link this overall findings that I have to that. It is going to be a bit of a shocker, and some people won't understand why until they see this video. And I'll be honest, I am a little shocked that that was the actual case. But as I say, I did take a look at it, and it was a little shocking. But if Eternatus is doing way too much damage, then it'll be better to mitigate from the rest of the team, especially if it is doing fast attacks. That I could be definitely setting up the team for a loss there as well. So the only Zacians that should be ever doing fast attacks is that they are basically level 50, and that you have the ability to take said damage. If you only have one Zacian that's doing that and 3 super fast that aren't doing it, then that's a lot less overall issues, and you still should be able to sneak out the single attack. So there's, some interesting team comps that we could deal with, but that's not really part of this study. I'm just kind of putting the facts out there for everyone. And with that, that is the end of this class. If you like all my classes, or if you've made it through, please like and subscribe. That really helps my channel. On top of it, I have a Twitch, twitch.tv/madguru. I also have a Discord. It is in the community section of my YouTube, just so that I don't get bots filling that in. On top of it, if you want to join and pay and be part of my community, you will have access to fights, as I will add you as a friend, and we can do Gmaxes, especially together. Dmaxes are a little bit harder, just because I'm usually helping my community out a little too much to be able to always do the invites. But for Gmaxes, I definitely can invite additional friends as well. But with that, I'm going to call it an evening. My voice is starting to crack as I'm still getting over this cold. And yes, it has been over a week and a half, and I'm over this cold already. But as always, I'll try to do better next time. Class is dismissed. You all have a good day. Bye, everyone.